Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast, where the blueprint to understanding a new and unified world is in our shifting consciousness.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining the Blueprint Podcast. I'm Angela Blahan. I have Renee Keene with me today. Hi Renee, how are you?
Good day, Angela. Yeah, it's a great day. I'm having a good one.
Awesome.
Looks like you are too.
Absolutely. Why not?
Hey, that's what this is all about.
For sure.
Every day is a new day, and you get to create what you want.
Yes, for sure. All right, so I thought we would talk about the soul's responsibility for self-actualization, because we're kind of on this self-actualization process.
Yep.
And what it all has to do with thriving, because we know from our past history as a human race that thriving has not actually been within the realm of reality for a good portion of humanity. And the reason being throughout history is because we've aligned with the ego and the ego's limitations. So I think that it's a great question to explore. And we have these sort of concepts, these interconnected concepts that bring about this personal growth and fulfillment. Well, how do we actually have personal growth and fulfillment? It takes a growth mindset first of all, and then, moving up the ladder of Maslow's hierarchy into self-actualization. And what is the soul's responsibility for self-actualization and thriving? So what's your opinion, Renee?
I find it a very interesting question that you pose, as I had never really given it any thought.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything that we do think about.
I have never looked at what my soul's responsibility is in this whole piece. And as I looked at that, I kind of had a little aha of could that possibly be why we never really get to the thriving piece? Mm-hmm. Because we don't engage the soul?
Mm-hmm. I think for me, I think that plays a large part, because if I'm really, wandering through life and I'm just paying attention to the ego, using logical thought, using, all the things that we're taught, am I fulfilled? Like, that's a huge, huge question. I think the older that you get, for me in particular, the older that I've become, the more I'm asking that question, like, what is fulfilling for me? Because I can escape into boredom real easily, and it's very quick. But I can't escape into fulfillment, it seems, because of the way that I've actually maybe have lived my life for such a long time. And when we ask this question of thriving and, living in fulfillment, which is really what self-actualization is, there comes this point, I think, in our life where we literally have to say, well, okay, have I been fulfilled? There have been points in my life where I've been fulfilled, but is it every single day? And overall, if I look at my, if I'm going to do a life review at the end, which is what we say we believe in, right? How much of that is actual fulfillment and how much of it is actual struggle?
And how do I sustain that feeling? It's more than a feeling. Mm-hmm. How do I sustain? Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. How do I sustain that fulfillment from more than like this little instance that just fills me all up? How do I carry that forward and make it last and forever? And as I've gotten older, I find it is because I am not pulling all of my aspects in, which is what I was kind of saying about the soul. For the larger part of my life, my soul is over here somewhere. That's my soul, and it'll take care of me or whatever, or not, whatever. But I have not fully embodied or activated my relationship with my soul. I've been working on that, and I love what's happening for me. I think a lot of us we just don't engage all the pieces, all the aspects of us. And I think that's what limits our thriving. That's why this moment of fulfillment lasts this long instead of lifelong.
Right.
And for each of us, that's a little different process in how we look at that. I fully am aware now that the soul is a big piece of that.
Yeah.
It's not separate from, the soul is not a separate part of me that lives somewhere else.
Right.
The soul is a part of me.
Well, I think that maybe we need to break these three things down: the soul, self-actualization, and thriving, right? So the soul is basically, in my opinion, you might differ in this, and everybody else might differ in this, but in my opinion, it's our unique vibration. It's the thing that makes us our natural expression of our truest self, right? And so if that is when in our lives have we ever been taught about our own unique expression of our truest self? I can tell you, never. Until I started asking questions.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's always been something that's been separated from us. I mean, all of, my religious background has taught me that. Even psychology, the psychology world has sort of taught us that, because, we're taught to deal with the emotions and the thought processes, never the spirit or the energy of who you are, the truest components of who you are. So, I've never ever, until I started having these deep yearnings to know more, like it never even came up in a subject. It never even came up in conversation. So for me, that's what a soul is, like your own vibration, your own unique energy, your own unique natural self. Do you have anything different?
I fully am on board with you on that. That is, I want to just state that is why it has taken, I'm speaking for myself, it has taken so many years for me to actually see myself.
Yeah.
Because this whole piece of me has been over here.
Yes.
And until I invited it to, work with me, and I work with this, it's a piece of me, which sounds really weird, but you can lock a piece of you in a closet and never look at it.
For sure.
So until you open the door and look at that piece of you, it doesn't open up to all these wonderful experiences. And it doesn't say, wow, you really do have that. That really resides within you.
It's almost like it's been cast as our shadow. Like the soul is almost, our unique, special abilities have been cast over time. That's the way I felt. Like even in my family history and society, still, like it's cast as a shadow, which is, in my opinion, one of the horrific things that we do to humanity.
Yeah, kind of like, when you die, you'll meet your soul.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that was kind of my whole understanding as I was growing up. It's just like, well, no, not at all. That's your authentic vibration.
Right.
That's you. That is you.
Right. It's like this experience never took into account that portion, the portion of us that is, in my opinion, the most important. Instead, we've aligned with all these other things.
All these other, in many cases, untruths about ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. All right, self-actualization. So that's really the process of fulfillment, right? One, fulfilling your potentials, the opportunities that we have throughout the course of a life existence, right? And basically, it's based on your strengths, your talents, your gifts. But for me, it's been a deep striving for self-actualization and for personal growth. Like I've been on this personal growth journey my whole entire life. It's based in authenticity, like really being my own natural self, deep desires, passions, like all of these things that fulfill a purpose or fulfill a mission, your mission in life. Like, what's your real reason for even being here?
Mhm.
So what's your version of self-actualization?
My version of self-actualization is to be so in line with who I truly am.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me is embracing all of it.
Yeah.
Unifying with all the pieces, looking at things that some people would refer to as shadow,
Mm-hmm.
looking at things that I've closed the door on, as I mentioned before. Self-actualization is being able to look at all of that and not going, oh, I did that. Oh, I'm gonna, it's being able to go, oh, okay, this is what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I do it? Did it serve me? Did it serve others? Just being able to ask those questions without that freak out,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to say, yeah, that is actually me. Is that where I want to continue to go? Or do I want to look at that and see if there's a different choice for me?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's the process of self-actualization, is looking at all of that. And as I move into that, it becomes fulfilling, because then I get to see who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I get to embrace the pieces of me that some people might not think are great, and some pieces of me that I didn't even know were there that I now think are great.
Right.
It's looking at the whole picture, which in this
Mm-hmm.
new world, what we're moving into, it is all new, and we get to look at the whole picture. So I don't want to take some of these pieces along. They're going to stay here.
Right.
I want to move forward. I want to self-actualize within myself so that I can be better for everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even accurate. That's not even an accurate way to say it.
Better for yourself.
It's better for myself. It's not really about anyone else.
No.
It's not about anyone else. The minute that came out, it was like, that's old. Stop. Be done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Transform that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love that I'm at a point where I catch it.
Yeah, for sure.
No, it's like it comes out and it's like, wait a minute, that's not it.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to thriving. So
Okay.
literally, I feel like it's a state of optimal well-being. It's the deep sense, for me, it's a deep sense of accomplishment and fulfillment. Like, I know that I know that I know, right? Like, there's no doubt. There's like, you're just in constant thriving, like positive, meaningful, healthy experience. For me, that's what thriving is. It's like making it rain in the jungle on a perfectly blue sky, and Ruben saying, you can't do that. Oh yeah, I can. Watch me.
But I just did.
That's those moments of bliss. Like, why don't we have them all the time? Like, that's what thriving is. It's like you knowing and understanding your own power, and you're using it, right? Like, you're using your power.
That's a key piece.
Mm-hmm.
The thriving isn't just, for me anyway, about, oh, everything's going smooth and it's all nice and it's looking good. That's not thriving. That's existence. That's existence. Thriving is when it's like you almost want to bust from the inside out, like, wow, look what I created. Wow, isn't this a glorious moment? And that's how I want to live every day, every moment of every day.
Mm-hmm.
That's thriving for me. Being just in that, well, you use the word bliss, just being in that state.
Mm-hmm.
And we can do that. We really can.
We can. I mean, even though you live in a world of duality where there's extreme opposites, you can still be in thriving in a world of opposites. Like, but what does it take to get there, right? Like, so the connection between all three of these components or concepts is this pursuit of meaning. Like, that's what we base it on. I feel like this meaning, like everything has to have deep, purposeful meaning. for me, it's more about the experiential portions of it and what I can learn and what I can grow into, what I can take from my shadow side, transform and put it into what I really want in life, having that extreme fulfillment of life. And how do we get that? Like, how does it become achieved? How does self-actualization become an achievement and something that we can actually pursue in life? So for me, there's the alignment component. And that's something that I think the world talks about all the time, but how do we actually move into a state of pure alignment? Now, I'm not talking about alignment for a certain cause or a certain thing that you want to do in your life. Like, I moved into alignment when I got my master's degree, right? But that's not necessarily, that was to fulfill a goal. It wasn't to fulfill a self-actualized process. Like, it's a lifelong journey, self-actualization, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
But what has to happen is the alignment of your thoughts, the alignment of your emotions, your actions, any decisions that you have, your values need to align, all of your belief systems, which is the big blockage, in my opinion. And it all needs to align with your purpose and your mission for even being here. Like, what's your soul's purpose for being here? What is your soul's experience that it wants to grow and expand into? And how do you move into, how do you know that? Like, that's the big question, I feel like. How do you know what your soul's purpose really is in the big picture, the 360 viewpoint? Yeah. Like, how do we know? Because we're just taking step by step every single day, right? And we really want to know what it is so that we can actually just go for it and do it. That's what self-actualization is, in my opinion, is like, it's the journey to get to the purpose.
Most definitely it is the journey. I'm going to say the first component that I saw when looking at all of this was I had to be willing to look at everything, at all aspects of myself. I had to be willing to work through the hard stuff. I had to be willing to know that the other side, on the other side, it was going to give me more that I was going to be able to align with. I think that's the step that what I see is the most difficult for people.
Yeah.
We say, oh, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit eating chocolate. I'm going to, I'm going to until the next time I do. And that's with the self-actualization. It's like, I want to dig in. I want to dig in. So one day I might really be working hard on myself. And the next day I'm like, I'm going to go out or whatever. It's that piece of committing to oneself that in every moment I'm going to work on self-actualization and really being committed to it. And that doesn't mean that you don't get to have fun or, I actually find it more fun. Now, because I'm leaving a lot of that behind. That doesn't, the old belief patterns, the old things that you really understand now that they're not actually true. So when you can let some of that go, it's like life is better. Life is more interesting. There's just more. There's always more. And in actually seeing who I am and bringing that forward, it's just fun.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean there aren't going to be tears or whatever, you have moments, but that's the process. That's the process in anything.
Right.
And
well, I think that tears need to, okay, first of all, I think that you brought up a good point, the willingness to heal yourself, the willingness to look at your own talents. Like, that's a huge fear for a good portion of people because we've never been taught that. A willingness to actually bring in and embody the real you. Like, that's, again, it's been shadowed so much that we like are afraid of it. We're afraid of our power. And so that willingness component is probably the first step you have to be willing to do it, right? To take a
Sure.
look, to do the work. I mean, I'm not saying that it's easy work. Some of it's real hard work to look at yourself, to look at how powerful you are, how powerful you have been in the past.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about just this lifetime, but memory will come in when you start to
Yes.
go down this actualization path. And you start to like look at all the things that you have been, not what you've done, what you have been.
Ben.
And some of those things can be very difficult for our ego, but the soul becomes very determined in the fact that it is here to heal all of those ego experiences and to transform them into wisdom, like the big picture of why we do things, the big picture of who we really are and why we have this kind of a experience in duality and what the purpose of it all is. I mean, all of that stuff starts to flood in.
Mhm.
And the willingness, I think, becomes very endangered when the ego says no, right? When the ego steps in and says, yeah, no, we're not doing this because I don't want to know everything that I don't want to remember everything that we've
Do I
actually
really have to know it all?
experienced, right? I mean, that's a big fear as well. And I think that that's, again, some of the reasons that are some of the things that stop us from moving into the path of self-actualization and thriving. Like, not all of us are wanting to thrive because, what do we do then? We can't fall back into our own lack, and we actually have to take 100% responsibility for our amazingness. That's not something that we're used to. So when we move into thriving in this process, not the process is not looking for meaning, and then thriving finds you. No, that's not how the process
No.
works. The process is knowing yourself, acting upon your passions and these deep yearnings that the soul brings to you, because the ego just wants to be lazy, so it will never bring a deep yearning. It just wants to stay static quo. But the soul brings in these deep yearnings, these deep like knowings that all of us have, but we have to recognize them. And then meaning gets created from that. So,
Absolutely.
and who doesn't want, a satisfying life, a fulfilled life versus pain and suffering? Like,
And there's a lot of that kind of attitude adjustment that goes with that. Because you do get to decide, well, yeah, I kind of like sitting over here in this pain and suffering. And it's like, no, I really don't. But when we've been so it's so ingrained.
yes.
It's so ingrained in us that's the piece when you start working on your own stuff, that it's so great when you can let that just go or transform it into more of what you're looking for, more of who you are,
Yeah.
more of what you want to bring forth as to who you are in your uniqueness.
Yeah. So what do you think about the thought process around, we have so many layers? Do you buy into that sort of mentality, or do you have experience where you can transform something layers upon layers upon layers instantaneously?
I think I'm not going to say a thing. I know I've experienced both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for me, it looks like it may be a choice we make at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
I know you can transform stuff now, all the way down, all the layers, boom, gone.
Mm-hmm.
I just did something like that a month ago with someone, and it was really awesome.
Yeah.
So I know it can be done. I also know sometimes our process is that, well, I can only handle this much.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessary to have layers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we become more evolved, we drop the layers.
Yeah.
I think that it's like, it really, when you're ready to let it go, man, it's gone. It's gone. And sometimes
That's
they're not fully ready to let it all transform.
well, that's where the willingness comes in, right? Like
Mhm.
the will. Like I think that we need to reevaluate what will is, right? Like internal
Okay.
will,
Yeah.
because I think that there's, like what is will? Like that was a big thing when I was growing up. My mother would always say, "Oh, you have such a strong will." And I'd be like, "I don't even know what
Is
that
that a
is."
good thing or is that a
Yeah.
bad thing? What does this mean, mother?
Usually it was a bad thing because I was,
Yeah.
brushing up against her and she was like fighting back at me. She's like,
Yeah.
stop it. Just stop it. You have such a strong
Angela.
will. Yeah. But I think that will needs to be reevaluated because I think that you need to have a strong will in order to
I agree.
self-actualize.
Mhm.
Otherwise, like, why is it a bad thing to have a strong will?
I don't see that as even with young kids, when they look at little ones running around and oh, there's a willful one, or there's someone. It's like, good, yay.
Yeah.
They're gonna thrive because they know what they want. They understand things. They're moving forward.
Yeah. Well, it's your determination to
Mhm.
be who you are. Like
Mhm.
what is so I've never understood that whole concept
No.
of why that's such a wrong thing to, and I'm constantly questioning things.
Right.
And I think that in my childhood it was seen as questioning authority, like just do as I say kind of mentality. And
Mhm.
we still have that very much in our, especially in the USA, just do as I say kind of
In
thing.
society, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, well, for me, it was very detrimental because I started to hide myself. And I think that, because of that, because, oh, you just stop using your will, stop having such a strong will. And so it was like really seen as a detriment. But actually, it's one of my biggest powers because I do question everything. And it is something that I use when I'm trying to explore my own self. Right? If you don't have internal will about exploring who you are, bringing up your shadow, understanding your gifts and abilities and your natural talents, the naturalness of who you are, I feel like the ego takes over and just compensates and just says, yeah, just be status quo.
That is exactly what I would totally. It's that ego jumps in and then it's like, no, everyone's wearing pink today. So you must
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I don't like pink. No, everyone's wearing pink today. It's that status quo. And that's the
Yeah.
difference. Our will was dumbed down because you had to
Mhm.
look this way or, and that still goes on, just like you said. So one of the big things for me as I've evolved in this, and I think it kind of goes along with the whole message, in the process of self-actualization, in moving forward and doing some of the things I do now, I did go through this time period where it's like, oh, what are they going to think of me?
Mhm.
If I start having people at my house for certain things, what are my friends who've been my friends forever? What are they going to think of me?
Yeah.
It didn't last long because it was like, I don't care. But it is a piece of the process of
Mhm.
actualization. I can't even say it. Of self-actualization. Part of the process is looking at all that. Does it matter what
Mhm.
the outside world or your friends or your family think about you? Maybe it does. And
Right.
maybe it only will up to a certain point for you. But when you can get beyond that,
Mhm.
so much more comes in so easily.
Yeah.
It's like letting go of the ego just a little bit more. And then there's more
Mhm.
room for you, the actual you,
Yeah.
or
That's when
person.
that's when that step by step, layer by layer
Mm-hmm.
experience
Yeah.
comes in, is because you're willing to do this much and then you're willing to do this much and then this much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some of us like to jump off the cliff,
Like
not
you.
mentioning names.
I did.
Like me.
You.
And just like go head first and just like see what happens, like
Mm-hmm.
it's,
Mm-hmm.
you know and so I think that I'm not willing to do the step by step. I'm willing to like literally jump off the cliff because I'm like, that's too slow. It's too boring for me. But for some people, we have clients that are just like, no, I need to do it step by step, which
Yes.
is perfect. Let's do step by step. I can help
Yes,
you with that,
exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
And so the will, I think, is one of the main components, like your
Mhm.
willingness to actually make a change, to
To
even
jump off the cliff or
or to do step by step. But
Yes.
I think that that's part of self-actualization is understanding and making decisions that are appropriate for who you are. Just because I jump off the cliff doesn't mean you have to jump off the cliff,
Exactly.
because it's cliff jumping is not for everyone. Like it's a big it's a big energy. And sometimes it doesn't turn out too well. You got to back up and say, oh, I should have took a couple steps before I jumped off that cliff.
And I will say, I have done both.
Yeah.
My process has included both. There have been times where it's just like, hell yeah, here I come. I'm
Yeah.
going. Nobody's stopping me.
Right.
There's been other times where it's been,
I think that that's part of the soul, like literally pushing you into, like for me, I think that the soul literally pushes me and says, let's just go. Let's just do it. Because, part of you has already done a good portion of this before in a different lifetime or a different
Yes.
experience. So let's just do it. Let's just go. It's like, okay. So I think that I think in self-actualization, I think it's totally driven by the soul. I think the ego takes a step back and says, okay, I'm out.
you're in charge now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I would tend to agree with you on that. Which takes us back to earlier in the conversation when we were talking about, is your soul here? A part of you? Have you activated your relationship with your soul, or is your soul still somewhere else?
Yeah. Have you embodied that aspect of you that, yeah. Have you embodied that aspect of you? Are you a soul being here, or, is your ego still dominating the show? But in self-actualization, I don't believe that ego can, or thriving, I don't believe that the ego plays a role. If it does, it's very minimal.
I was going to say, when you're in that thriving thing, I think egos is in the closet.
Yeah.
Or the far corner.
Yeah.
Just not really very present.
Right. Yeah. I always used to say I'd put my ego in the bathroom and I wouldn't let it out until I said I could come out, because I needed to do some soul work here.
They probably took that from you and said, mine's in the closet.
Yeah. So is the soul responsible for self-actualization? My opinion says yes. Yeah.
Which leads you to thriving.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I'm here for, thriving. I'm not here for suffering and any of that kind of thing any longer.
No. And again, go ahead.
Well, once you get into thriving and you get into those moments of bliss, like that's all you want in life. Like that becomes your driver, because it's so fulfilling there. I don't find fulfillment in suffering. Like I understand the process of suffering. I understand that, you have to, like, for lots of people, being in a bad mood or a sad mood or crying, like they consider that suffering. I don't feel like that is actual suffering. I mean, it is part of the process to get to something else, whatever's on the other side of it, but it's not necessarily suffering. And I think that, I don't know, I feel like this whole concept of you have to suffer in order to know yourself is just BS. Like,
agreed. Totally wrong.
No, I don't buy into that belief. That's an old belief.
And I know there'll be a lot of people who don't agree with this, but I do think that you choose to suffer.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that hard things don't happen to people, or that traumatic, different. I'm not ignoring that, but I can look at any number of people who, from my perception, might be considered, oh, wow, they're really suffering. they may be having the time of their life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like, and so for them, that's not suffering.
Right.
That's
Right.
what they enjoy.
Yeah.
So it's that labeling of terms again. I choose
Mhm.
not to look at the suffering in situations. I mean, I choose to look at, it doesn't mean I don't cry when something's sad or whatever, but I'm looking at the other piece of it. I don't want to look at the suffering side. I want to look at the beauty, the wonder,
Mhm.
the gift that has been. And what's the gift within all of what's going on that some people are choosing to suffer around?
Right. Right. Yeah.
And again, I don't know, that's
It's all based in perception and what you believe.
it is. And we were taught, many of us were taught, you need
Yes.
to suffer to get to a certain point. Therefore, there's that belief. That's one of the beliefs I got rid of first,
Mm-hmm.
the need to suffer. Nope,
I agree.
don't need to suffer.
No. 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 No.
The thriving piece is just, I guess I'd like to say I'm living and thriving way more now than I've ever have
Mhm.
in most of my existences,
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
of my lifetimes. It's way more now. Not all of them, but in many, 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 many of them, it's
Yeah.
like sometimes there just aren't even words.
Right.
For the experience when you're in that thriving mode.
Yeah. I think that this is like, we talk about new earth, new world, new self mentality a lot. And I think that this is one of the components to it creates a baseline for the new you, for the new earth. It's not, our baseline into this new earth is not suffering. It is thriving. And where do we get to go from thriving?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that seems very complete.
Sounds
that.
like it is, doesn't it? I
And
like
it gives
it.
us something to look forward to.
It does.
Yes.
It really
Yeah.
does. There is so much wonder and delight in the experiences out there for each and every one of us.
For sure. Yeah.
Drive away.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such a pleasure.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I enjoyed it myself.
You can find any of Renee's connections. Her website thing is also in the links below. So thanks for joining. Thanks everyone for listening to the Blueprint podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for being with us today. To find out more about Angela, visit her website at www.angelablaha.com.